So, it's a miserable day today. We're on Saturday. We're on Saturday at the end of April. And there's been a lot about Jewish people suddenly. The Jews and Israel and Zionism and all sorts of stuff like that in the papers, because we've had Ken Livingstone weigh in with the thing that suddenly appeared as the Naz Shah strange statement she's made a few years back or something. 2014, she said something about Jews, how you could take the whole of Israel and stick it in the middle of America or something. And the kind of implication, I suppose, is that, you know, the Jews are the problem, Israel's the problem, get out of the Middle East, and all that. Okay. And then Ken Livingstone with these strange statements. I'll try and start by saying this. Before I go into saying anything about that, I think I should just say what I think of Jewish people. I mean, what a bunch of bastards. I used to work in a shop, and Jewish people used to come in, and they used to say shalom and stuff. I mean, they treat me like I'm their friend or something, you know, cordial, polite. They buy stuff, you know, they don't steal it. They buy stuff and they hand the money over like they're normal members of society. And obviously I would be deeply upset by them being cordial with me like that. There was a time me and my mate were running where I used to live when I was younger. I were just for running. I was knackered, absolutely knackered. And there was a guy called Silver who lived just across the way. I mean, hardly any distance. And him and his wife lived there. And he used to go out running. I think he split up from his wife or something, but he lived there for a bit and he went running. And I was ill with something, and it was at the beginning of what I have, a chronic illness. And I mean, what a bastard he was. He came up to me and started trying to suggest maybe I should see a doctor, because I obviously did have something wrong. He said this quietly, you know, in his reserved way. And he spoke to me on a kind of cordial basis and trying to assist me with this problem I had that really I couldn't get any help with for some reason. It's very difficult to get doctors to recognise. It takes 8 years to get doctors to recognise that. And he was kind of bolstering my confidence a bit and stuff. I mean, how dare he? How dare he try and you know, be cordial and try and help? I mean, the arrogance. I knew a Jewish kid at school. The few Jewish people lived in the area where I went to school. My area was quite mixed. There were council estates, and there were still some wealthy people and stuff. Like the guy next door owned his own shop and stuff like that. We were pretty middle of the road, both parents worked and stuff. But we went to this area called the Mearns, where there was a posh school, posh area. It was at that time, things change. But a lot of Jewish people there. And they had a local synagogue and stuff. And it was, you know, they were a good laugh. I mean, I don't know who they thought they were kidding. You know, being friendly and joining in and laughing and stuff like normal people. So yeah, obviously I have a sack load of stuff, grudges against the Jews. You know, I'd far rather that when me and my spouse walked down the road, instead of seeing a bunch of Jewish boys, the little dread things and the little hats, during Shabbat or whatever, I'd far rather see a bunch of Muslim guys, young Muslim guys, come along and spit on the pavement as me and my black spouse walk along because they don't like people mixing. Obviously I'd be much more comfortable with that. And obviously when I worked in a shop and those Jewish people come in and said shalom and all that and bought stuff, I'd far rather that the white drunkard came in and while his friends were distracting me, he steals a bottle of wine and then comes back later and punches me because I had the affront to report him and thereby keep my job, because it is my job to notice if stuff gets stolen. Yeah, I'd far rather that happened. So Jews, what a bunch of bastards, man. The other Jewish guy I knew was, this is quite funny. was Mr. and Mrs. Weiss, or Weiss, I don't know how you pronounce it, Weiss I would have said. And they were in Salford, where I mean, they had some horrible houses that they let out. I mean, health concerns galore, but fact is, it was legal at the time. So I was renting out this little hovel from them, and I could go off on a rant about Jewish people, and could say, oh yeah, he did. I could put a spin on it, but they were perfectly decent people. I just rented a crap place from them in one of the houses they had in Salford. So what? I remember breaking into the gas meter because I was hard up for money at that time. Some things don't change. I broke into the gas meter and took a load of coins out of it. And then before I left, I broke back in again and put a load of coins back in. Anyway, I went to collect my deposit, whatever, from Mr. Weiss. And he was talking to me, and his daughter was there. It was quite nice looking. And he's saying to me about various things, and he was asking me about, where I came from and stuff. And I mentioned to him about this guy I knew just up the road where I used to live and stuff. And he said, the thing is, he said, there was something wrong with the amount of money. There was the wrong amount of money in the gas meter. And I said, I more or less intimated to him, I think he understood that I had broken into the gas meter and then put money back. And my understanding was afterward that what actually happened was I put too much money back. So that's how he knew I'd broken in, because he counted up the number of units and gone, there's too much money in this meter. Which is ridiculous, because the amount they charged through that gas meter was extraordinary. So it's quite funny that I broke in, and then in making it up I put too much money back. It's quite funny. And Mrs. Weiss, who, you're a young guy, so you sort of have a crush on anybody. And I had a bit of a crush on Mrs. Weiss. And this guy upstairs said, God, he said, how can you have a crush on her? She's got hairy legs. Now, that was quite funny. I said to him, well, every woman I've ever known has got hairy legs. I mean, they basically all shave their legs. And then this is virtually true of I've never known a woman, blonde, ginger, black, any colour of the spectrum that doesn't shave their legs. Right? It's just a thing. So I discounted that. I thought, but that's how it goes. So I suppose I could blame her for being good looking and have those lovely dark eyes and stuff. Yeah, you could say lots of things. So they're all on now about this Jewish thing and are people anti-Semitic or not. There's something I'd just like to point about the way that Ken Livingstone has spoke about it, and he's used a kind of clever way of talking. Hitler was a Zionist before he went mad. The amount of layers you have to unpeel from that to figure out what he's saying and whether he's saying it. I'll be quite honest, I think that Mr. Livingstone is hanging around with people who are the kind of people that speak in what I would call a Torah sense. In other words, they say words that might mean this or might mean that, and the words are so arranged that they could mean anything you like. And you could take it any way you like, and that's what we call not speaking straight. That's what Red Indians would call speaking with a forked tongue. You're saying things and it's not exactly clear what you mean, but it might be insulting, or it might be racist, or it might not be. This is the way, that way right there, is the way that Jimmy Savile spoke. If you ever saw Jimmy Savile interviewed, when I see Muslims being interviewed, and I see Ken Livingstone being interviewed about what he said, I start to hear Jimmy Savile speaking. They've got that way of saying stuff that it's sort of left of field and in a very unpleasant way. You start to think to yourself, they're trying to say something. It's like saying something so that their mates will go, yeah, I know what you mean. And yet everyone else will say, is that racist? I'm not sure it's racist. Well, here's the word on that. If you're clever enough to make up these clever phrases and to bring these clever historical references to bear about how you feel about Jews, I think you're damn well clever enough to know that it could be taken as a massive insult and might be stoking up the fires. And what you're doing is you're building up your currency with the kind of people that, for whatever reason, you find it useful to build your currency with at the time. So people like Ken Livingstone, who I've got to say looks as Jewish as anybody I've ever met, people like Ken Livingstone are building up their currency, presumably with Muslim people. Because those are people who everyone knows hates Jews. I mean, it took me a while to realise this. I didn't realise this antipathy. But Pakistanis hate Indians. Indians hate Pakistanis. The Muslims probably hate both of them. And there's this Wahhabist thing coming over from Saudi Arabia, a country which refuses to take Arabs even though there's Arabs spilling out in the Middle East. Apparently, it's better for Arabs to walk halfway across the world and end up in Europe and on the far side of Europe than it is for them to stay where they are and go just next door to neighbouring Arab countries. There's something odd about that should ring alarm bells all across Europe. So Jewish people, yes, those terrible Jewish bastards. I mean, God, you know, talking cordially and being perfectly affable with you, and yeah, what have they done except be half exterminated by Hitler? And they built themselves up from there. And the Israeli state, they had to carve that out because everyone wanted to push them into the sea. Let me put it this way. If our government had given our SAS the mission to carve out a state in the middle of the Middle East, they'd have been congratulating their SAS on managing to do it. The fact that a group of people managed to get together and create a safe haven, which is what Israel is. Israel was created, 10 years roughly after the end of the Second World War. So basically, the Jews, having been persecuted and gassed to death, exterminated like rats, decided they would make a safe haven. They called it Israel. They stuck it, it's in the middle of the Middle East where the traditional lands were, and they were kicked out of a long time ago. And some people have just never forgiven them for doing it. You're either entitled to a place to live in the world or you're not. Just to clarify, I said to my brother once, what would save a lot of trouble in the Middle East would be, wait for it, if they just took Israel and put it in the middle of Arizona. And I said, you could move it brick by brick and it'd be cheaper than the fighting that's continually going on and all the trouble. But of course that misses the entire point. That's a naive point of view which you'd expect a guy like me to have put forward. I said exactly what Naz Shah said, but I don't have anything against Jews. I miss the entire point, and people do. The point is, are they entitled to have a place to live that's a safe haven or not? And the answer is they are. And their historic lands are in the Middle East. So I guess it still needs resolved. But the fact is this, the Jews are no more to blame than anybody else. And if you try exterminating a race and then they fight back, don't be surprised they fight back. And to be frank, they're to be commended for managing to create a safe haven. Maybe right now you'd be facing Jewish terrorism en masse. Now, of course, the Muslim people say that there is Jewish terrorism. The Jews have created a state out of a bowl of dust because everybody wanted to push them into the sea, and some of them still do. And they would be quite happy if somebody dropped a bomb in Israel and exterminated all the Jews tomorrow. And I'm saying, given the Jews' history of having to fight to just exist, what they've done is the minimum that they could be expected to do in order to safeguard the future of their race. Would that some other races did the minimum that they had to do to safeguard the future of their race? Would that they would do that, then we wouldn't have had the Second World War. And because Hitler would have stopped at Czechoslovakia. And we wouldn't have had this exodus from the Middle East because other Arab states would have taken them in. So the Jews, what a bunch. Perfectly affable, and I'm not frightened when I walk down the road and I see a bunch of Jewish boys. They're not going to spit in the pavement as they go past, unlike some other ethnic races. Thanks for watching and listening.